Good evening. Welcome to the Parent Academy Safety and Security Virtual Town Hall Meeting. My name is Mary Beth Stapleton, and I oversee the Parent Academy for Harford County Public Schools. Thank you for joining us this evening for the Parent Academy Safety and Security Virtual Town Hall. We're here this evening to talk about safety and security of our students as we begin the 2020-2023 school year. As a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 2, I know, just like you as a parent and a caregiver, you're concerned every day about the safety of your child in your home, in your child's school, and in the community. Well, we've heard a lot from parents over the past few months, questions and concerns around safety. And tonight we have a panelist group to talk to you about what their plans are for the 2022-2023 school year. To get us started, I do want to mention, though, we do have some esteemed guests in the audience this evening. We have our Board of Education members, Vice President Dr. Carol Mueller, Mrs. Ariane Kelly, and Dr. David Bauer. We have Dr. Sean Bolson, Superintendent of Harford County Public Schools. We have our Parent Advisory Council members who are here to represent the entire Parent Advisory Council for Harford County Public Schools. We have Harford County Council PTA representatives, and we have our esteemed law enforcement partners with us this evening. So thank you all for being here this evening. To get us started, I'll walk you through the program for this evening by introducing for you the panelists that will give you the information that you need around safety and security planning, mental health supports, bullying prevention, and communication. To start us off this evening, we're going to have Dr. Eric Davis, Chief of Administration, Chief Donovan Brooks, overseeing safety and security for the school system, Dr. Stacy Geringer, Principal of Abingdon Elementary, and also the co-chair of the Harford County Public Schools Safety and Security Task Force this year. Thank you. Mr. Buck Hennigan, Executive Director of Student Services, Dr. Paula Stanton, who is the Supervisor of Equity and Cultural Proficiency, and we also have Mrs. Jillian Lader here, our Manager of Communication, who will talk with us about communication planning. So to start us off, we're going to have Dr. Davis give us an overview from a leadership perspective on safety and security and the return for the 2022-2023 school year. Dr. Davis?
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Stapleton. And welcome, everyone. And thank you so much for being here. Before I get started, though, I just want to thank the wonderful people on this stage because they are the true folks who are really responsible for our safety and security process. So I'd also like to thank our studio audience. As you heard from Ms. Stapleton, we've got our Parent Advisory Council here. We've got HCC PTA members here. We've got law enforcement officers, Board of Education members, our superintendent. We've got so many folks who are out to really engage in this conversation around safety and security because this is one of the most important topics that we could talk about. Now, I'd also like to recognize and thank all of the folks who are tuning in this evening. We realize that you could be doing 100 different things, but the fact that you chose to tune in to us for 90 minutes to engage in this dialogue about safety and security is greatly appreciated. So to give you a little context about our journey for safety and security, we knew as we started thinking about going into the upcoming school year that we had to do things a little bit differently. I mean, let's face it, over the past 2.5 years, we've been focused on COVID-19. And so we got out of practice a little bit. Not to say that we weren't focused on safety, because we were. We were focused on safety. It was just a different type of safety. COVID-19 safety protocol safety. And so when we started looking at safety and security going into the upcoming school year, we knew it was going to be different. And so I have to give big kudos to Dr. Stacy Geringer and Chief Donovan Brooks, because leading our safety work group, they went out and met with so many different stakeholder groups. They met with parents, they met with teachers, they met with law enforcement officers, board members, students, to really talk about how we should structure our safety and security process for the upcoming school year. And then they partnered with our Office of Research and Accountability under the leadership of Mr. Usmanu Yakuba and created a research report that you can find on our website in its entirety. But with that research report, there are 3 recommendations that will guide our work as we move forward. And really, everything that you're going to hear about this evening has to do with those 3 recommendations. The first recommendation is to increase the frequency of safety training and critical incident drills. As I mentioned, over the past 2.5 years, we were focused on COVID. And so we want to make sure that we establish, as Mr. Brooks likes to say, that muscle memory for our 5,000 staff members so that they can feel comfortable and confident with the safety and security process. So that's the first recommendation. The second recommendation is huge. Is to establish a unified command process with our law enforcement officers. And I have to say, we have some of the best law enforcement officers in the entire state of Maryland. We meet with them on a monthly basis. We meet with our SRO officers, and we meet with the 4 jurisdictions to really talk about things that we can do to improve our safety and security process, but then they also let us know some things that are happening in the law enforcement world as well. And we do that on a monthly basis. But just 1 week ago, to talk about this whole unified command process, we pulled all of our 4 jurisdictions together, the leadership in those particular law enforcement agencies. Our critical incident leadership plan process, we pulled all of our leadership together over at the EOC, and we went through a tabletop training where we responded to an actual situation at a school, and we assessed our capability. And we learned a lot. We learned a lot. And because of that particular meeting, we will be meeting with our law enforcement partners 3 or 4 more times throughout the school year, so that we're really moving in that particular area. Now, the last area is to establish prevention training for parents, for students, and staff members. Now, I'll take each one. Parents. Well, that's evidenced by tonight with this virtual town hall meeting. This is the kickoff to the regional parent academy workshops that we will be having throughout the school year on safety and security. Now, I have to say, Ms. Stapleton has created probably one of the most premier parent workshop processes in this state. And that, coupled with our safety and security process, we know that we will be able to build the capacity of our parents so that they can feel comfortable and confident about what we're doing. Our student training. Now, you're going to hear some information about mental health support, information about bullying, but you're going to also hear about a program from Chief Brooks that's going to be new this year. I'm not going to steal his thunder because this program is, I think, going to be fantastic because what it does is it links our students to the safety and security process. And I can't wait to hear his comments when he shares that. And the last group, staff. All 5,000 of our staff members, we want to make sure that we put this prevention training in place so, again, they feel comfortable and confident to be able to respond to an emergency situation. So one of the immediate things that we're going to do in meeting with our Director of Organizational Development, Dr. Peter Carpenter, we're going to have safety and security a part of every one of our leadership meetings. When we meet with assistant principals, when we meet with our principals, when we meet with our supervisors and our directors, safety and security is going to be on the agenda in some way, shape, or form, just so that we can ensure that everyone feels comfortable and confident and that they can go back and then train the staffs that they work with on a daily basis. So we've got a lot going on and that you're going to hear about tonight. And again, everything focuses on those three recommendations: mental health supports, bullying, emergency preparedness. And then the last thing you're going to hear about, which I'm so excited, because under the leadership of Jillian Lader, she has done so much to bring this new communication resource to our district that is going to change the game for safety and security. I can't wait to have her share that with you. So in closing out my comments, again, I want to just thank you all for being here tonight. You know, we know that safety and security is on everyone's minds right now, especially with what just happened in Texas. We want to make sure that we have a plan in place, a clear plan that everybody is comfortable with, everybody feels that we can do what we need to respond to emergency situation. And we believe that we can do that with those three recommendations that we're going to focus on throughout the year. So we look forward to answering your questions tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to Chief Brooks.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Good evening. Before I go any further, I want to take the opportunity to introduce our law enforcement partners who are very critical and key members of our safety and security across the Harford County Public School District. And so we have with us tonight Chief Teresa Walters from the Havre de Grace Police Department. And with her, we have Captain Joe Alton, also from the Havre de Grace Police Department. We have Chief Charles Moore from the Bel Air Police Department. We also have with us this evening Corporal Janelle Myers from the Harford County Sheriff's Office. And we also have Jason Neidig, Corporal Jason Neidig from the Aberdeen Police Department. All of our police department partners support our safety and security efforts throughout the Harford County Public School System through our School Resource Officer Program, as well as other initiatives that we focus on in our school system. So, Dr. Davis already spoke about some of the things that I'm going to go a little bit deeper about. One of the things we decided to do from our stakeholder feedback, and I want to let you know, we started these stakeholder groups last fall of 2021. We knew that we were coming all the way back into the brick and mortar structure of our buildings. We also saw an escalation of things that we had seen before, but we had not seen at the rates that we were seeing them. So we knew that we had to come together. But here's what we knew. We knew we could not operate in a vacuum. We knew that we had to have the voice of every single stakeholder across the district. As Dr. Davis already mentioned, that included our parents, that included members of our business community, our law enforcement, as well as internal stakeholders across the spectrum of our school district. What emerged from that are some things that I'm going to share with you this evening that were very key. And so one of the things that we received in terms of recommendation was the expansion of our Office of Safety and Security. It had outlived its usefulness based on the current structure that we had. Right? It served a purpose for a period of time, but our needs have grown. So out of that, we have expanded the Office of Safety and Security to add 3 regional safety and security coordinators who will serve as supervisors for our school safe liaisons, which I'll talk about in a minute. These regional school safety supervisors will manage our northern, central, and southern regions in our district. They will support our principals. They will build relationships with our community members, our law enforcement partners, and they will also provide guidance for our emergency drills and other safety initiatives and protocols that we have in the Harford County Public School System. In addition to our 3 regionals, I'm happy to say that a program that we piloted under the leadership of Dr. Bolson and Dr. Davis 3 years ago, which was the School Safe Liaison Program. And that program was designed to do exactly what it says, to have someone in the building that could liaise between our students, our administrators, and our school resource officers, to be able to stand into the gap for some of those issues that rise to the level of intervention, but may not necessarily rise to the level of law enforcement intervention, to help re-guide and redirect students, to help develop plans with parents, right? So I'm happy to announce that we'll be adding 18 new. And we've already started that hiring process, and we've already made offers to members of the community who have said, raised their hand and said, I would like to be a school safe liaison and come in and support the efforts of the school, the safety and security within our school system. I'll also let you know that our school safe liaisons are required to have the same exact training as our school resource officers, and that's 70 hours of mandated training, where they take that 70 hours of training that helps them with everything from de-escalation, when they recognize situations that we want to de-escalate, all the way to how to coalesce with our community, with our parents and our teachers, and provide support throughout our school district, from not just a safety and security perspective, but a relationship building perspective as well. And that's one of the key responsibilities that our school safety liaisons have, and building those relationships across their whole school community. And so with that, as we go into some of our safety initiatives, again, the recommendations made by, and I want to say you, because all of you participated in our stakeholder groups, our focus groups. So what emerged from that was recommendations that will drive the work that we do surrounding safety and security. And so, as I've already mentioned, Dr. Geringer, who was my co-chair and remains my co-chair for our school safety work group, what emerged from that was some revisions to our critical incident guide. And Dr. Geringer, in a second here, will go in take a deeper dive into some of these areas. But our critical incidents and our guide, we also, what emerged from that was, we saw in the first slide, training, training, training. As Dr. Davis said, I believe that when we do that training, we create muscle memory. But really what training also helps you do, it helps you think your way through things. Because if you've never seen anything or you've never experienced before, and you got to think about it for the first time, it becomes a little bit more difficult when you say, okay, we've trained for this, I've seen this before, let me think my way through this. Let me make some good life-saving decisions. Because at the end of the day, that's what safety and security is about. It's about the preservation of property and life. And so also with our joint stakeholder recommendations along the lines of training was to do more training with our law enforcement partners, right? And we did that training in the method and the way that Dr. Davis spoke about at the Emergency Operations Center, when we partnered with our law enforcement agencies and we went through a tabletop scenario. And I can tell you that that tabletop scenario really got the pulse rate going and really got the mind thinking, because we tried to create it as real as we possibly could, so that we can prepare. And we will continue to do that, and I'm happy to announce in 2023, we will be planning to invite you all, both out in our viewing audience and here, in one of our real-world exercises, where we'll ask for role players and we'll ask for members of our community to participate in this drill and in this exercise, so that we can go through this, and we'll have everybody as a part of these drills and these exercises when we do it in a real-world facet. And then, going back to the top, I'd like to introduce again my co-chair, Dr. Geringer, who will talk a little bit more about our initiatives.
Thank you, Chief Brooks. First, I'm going to address the restructuring of safety and security. Our building-based administrators are very excited about having extra support. We will be able to have our regional coordinators help look through our critical incident plans, be able to watch our students exit our buildings, to be able to give us feedback about how we can make it safer. Just last week, our regional safety security regional coordinator walked through Abingdon at our school, and we talked about ways our students would be able to safely exit, issues that we had, and suggestions that she had. We recognize that our degrees are in education, so anything that we can do with an expert to keep our students safe and learning, we are very excited about. So thank you very much for that support to be able to expand that office, because it will keep our students and staff safer. In regards to our safety work group, we have a fantastic group that represents transportation, risk management. It represents our guidance. It also has our athletic director, and it also has our law enforcement partners on that. And what our safety group does is it really looks at our county and looks at our procedures and practices and tries to figure out what can we refine to make better. And as Chief Brooks mentioned, the first task was to look at a critical incident quick guide. And what we realized is, while the previous guide had great information, it was a little unuser-friendly, if you will. What we made it is we made it more visual, it was quick thinking, it's consistent. And with our summer symposium this summer, we were able to train our administrators how to quickly respond. And that way we have a consistent response, we make sure that people need to be notified, and we're able to move forward and keep law enforcement in that loop so we can work collaboratively together to keep those campuses safe. As far as our stakeholder emergency operation training, that was the first time that I ever had an opportunity to do that. And I can tell you, your heart does get bumping when you realize that there is a situation, but it was great to look at each other at our Harford County table and work with our law enforcement partners and talk about and work through what can we do for that? How can we do that differently? What can we do to make that better? So that was a fantastic opportunity that we worked collaboratively to make sure that when, heaven forbid, if something like that ever happened, that we were as prepared as possible to make sure that we moved forward, kept our students safe, and worked to reunify our populations.
Thank you. So as a part of our ongoing safety programs, one of the things that we have decided to do in the 2022-2023 school year is to create our first ever Student Safety Council. And we will create this Student Safety Council and very shortly here in the beginning of the school year, where members, student members across our district will be able to participate in our Student Safety Council. And what will be the purpose of the Student Safety Council? Well, one of the things that we realized is, again, not operating in a vacuum, but who's most impacted by all of the things that we're talking about here? It's our students. We want our students to have an opportunity to come to the table and have a voice, to be able to talk about what safety looks like to them. Oftentimes we say as adults, we talk about the things that keep us up at night. Well, guess what? I want to know the things that worry our students as well when it comes to safety and security. I want what they have to say to also help drive some of our policy and keeping them safe and secure. But I want them to also be able to go back and talk to their peers about the things that they're going to learn as a part of our Student Safety Council, where we'll have members, again, of our law enforcement community on that council, where they'll have an opportunity to coalesce with our mental health practitioners, right? Because one thing that we take pride in Harford County Public Schools is taking a holistic approach to safety and security. We want a holistic approach. We want every stakeholder who is involved and who will be touched by a significant incident or event to be involved in what we do in terms of our planning and our vision and what we want it to look like. And so what better than to have our students participate and have that opportunity to have a voice as well. So that's one of the things that we'll do in terms of the creation of our safety programs. Again, we will emerge deeper into our tabletops. We had already begun tabletop exercises prior to going into our COVID protocol, where we took the opportunity with our SROs and schools, and we were actually meeting in a couple of different locations. One was Harford County Community College, where we would run large-scale tabletops with a particular school or a cluster of schools that were in close proximity. And in much the same way, we would provide scenarios, and then we would go through those scenarios and how those schools would respond and how the key members of those schools that are in leadership roles would respond, and what the roles are and the responsibilities are, where our authority begins and ends as members of the school system, and where that authority begins with our law enforcement officer, and where we take their lead and their guidance on particular incidents. And that's why these tabletop exercises are so critical and so key. Again, folks said we need to have more drills. So we had already created in 2018 under the Maryland Safe to Learn Act, it was mandated that every school district have an active assailant program. Here in Harford County, we created what was called a CERT, Active Assailant Critical Response Training. Once again, our law enforcement community stepped up. There were over 30 law enforcement officers that were involved in helping to train over 5,000 members across our district. And when the school doors opened the following year, all of our members, from cafeteria workers to our bus drivers to our paraprofessionals and teachers and everyone else, had received training in active assailant critical response training. So thereby, when our students came into the building and we started to run these drills, they could provide and build capacity in our students to be able to listen and respond in these types of critical events. And so reunification, which we talked about earlier, is where we're really putting a lot of focus on now, because what we've seen with some of these events across the country, that reunification is also key. In the aftermath and as a part of recovery from these events, to be able to reunify students and staff members with their families. And so this is where we're also building capacity in members of our district in collaboration with our law enforcement partners, emergency service partners, and I'm happy to say even Upper Chesapeake Health participated in our tabletop drill for reunification. And so to round out our programs, we have our School Resource Officer Program. And again, our school resource officers are very valued members of our Harford County Public School community and our family. I like to say that our school resource officers are ambassadors to both safety and education, because though they are there for protection, they've made the declaration to place themselves between the threat of imminent danger and harm and the safety of others. But they do so much more than that. They are mentors. Some of them coach in athletics. They support our schools in lots of other ways, right? Just not from a law enforcement perspective. And they will continue to build relationships with our school safety liaisons moving forward so they can have a collaborative partnership. And so once again, a school safe liaison knows where their authority and their involvement starts and ends and where the school resource officer may need to come in, right? And those times where they can collaborate. Why? Not just to keep our students safe and protected, but to also provide wise counsel to our students. Because prevention is the most important measure we can ever take. Everything else that we're talking about is preparing to respond. But if we can prevent things from happening, then that puts us in the best position. And again, our SROs that are in our schools are required to have the 70 hours of mandated training as well as our school safe liaisons. And so with that, I'd like to thank Dr. Geringer. And again, I'd like to thank you all for being here. And next, I want to introduce our Executive Director of Student Support Services, Mr. Buck Hennigan.
Good evening. So I have the humble responsibility and privilege to oversee our special education, student services, and Title I office. Across those offices, we have hundreds of professionals out in our schools that are dedicated to ensuring the mental and physical wellness of our students. They not only work in a reactive manner to needs that are brought forth, but they work proactively in conjunction with all that Donovan and Dr. Geringer discussed to address the safety of our schools. And their work is vital to that effort. And you see on the screen many of our staff members that are in all of our buildings. I would urge you that if your child has a physical or mental need, mental health need, that you work with your school to identify which of these staff members would be best suited to work with your child. In addition to these staff, we have several programs available to students across our system. Many of these programs are working in conjunction with our partners across the county, and some of them are just involving our staff within the school system. For many years, we've had school-based mental health program, which this is a program by which community partners come into our buildings and provide mental health services to our students. We have increased this over the years to the point that we now have mental health providers in all of our school buildings. And post-COVID, with all the needs that we've had and the strain that's been put on many of our mental health providers, we have now increased to having 10 mental health providers that we work with, and 12 of our schools have entered into contracts with 2 different providers that can get to all the students in need. We have also instituted emotional wellness teams in all of our schools. These teams work together with the school performance teams to identify the plans that they're going to put forth throughout the school system to address the emotional needs of our students, so they can have a systemic approach to finding ways to be proactive and prevent any needs that may come up. Our school counseling offices worked really hard over the last couple of years to develop a needs assessment. This needs assessment is instituted last school year to every student. It is voluntary, and it asks students to identify needs that they may have regarding their emotional and mental wellness. That data is then brought forth to the emotional wellness teams to decide what interventions need to be put forth in the school system to address the needs that they're finding. Each school finds different needs that are tied to their building and have different plans that are going to address those needs with their students. We also have a student support team in every one of our schools. This team identifies needs of students through referrals that are brought forth by any of the staff members. These could be academic needs, behavioral needs, emotional, physical wellness needs. This multidisciplinary team works together to look at these referrals and identify any interventions that need to be put in place to help that student. This also involves the parent, maybe the most important member of that team, to look at what their child needs at home, what's happening, and what that child may need in the building. I'm really proud of the work that's been going on with our trainings. 2 big trainings that we really would like to highlight are QPR, which is Question, Persuade, Refer. That is a 90-minute suicide prevention training that can be implemented with not only students but staff. And Youth Mental Health First Aid. That is an 8-hour training that is typically done with staff, or adults, I should say. We have trained over 1,000 of our staff members in youth mental health first aid and QPR. We also are expanding our efforts to do this training in the community so we can work with parents and other community members who want to learn about how to address the mental health needs of their students. In 2018, we partnered with the Sheriff's Office and have since expanded to all of our police departments in the county on the Handle with Care program. This program is set up so that if a police officer encounters one of our students at the scene, that they will then send a message to us that says Handle with Care and the student's name. We get no information about the incident. We get no information about what may have happened at night. But what we do know is when that child comes into school the next day, we are going to handle him or her with care because they had an incident that they were involved with the night before. This is vital to helping our staff understand the needs of our students that go beyond our school walls. We also have several students throughout the school years throughout the school year that may need to be hospitalized for their mental health needs. So we have instituted a program called the Reintegration Meetings. These meetings are set up so that when that child returns from that mental health hospitalization, this is our time to wrap our arms around that child and the family and to try to figure out what it is that we could do in the school to help that seamless transition back and to find what supports we need to put in place so that they can reintegrate comfortably. We also have teams in our schools that address the threats that are made. We have students that may make threats against others or may make threats against themselves. These threat assessment teams and risk assessment teams sit to work with the student and the family to identify the needs of the student, to identify the level of the threat, and identify what interventions have to be put in place to address that. Over the past couple of years, our Office of School Counseling has also worked on emotional wellness curriculum. Every school year, our counselors go into our classrooms to work with students to help them proactively address needs that may come up throughout the school year. We've increased this so that we can continue to double down on our efforts to proactively work with our students in a preventative manner so that our students are well equipped with the skills they need to address any myriad of issues that may come their way throughout the school year. Sadly, we do have students who express suicide ideation throughout the school year. Whenever this happens and any student expresses any desire to hurt themselves, we do a suicide ideation report. This is a way for the mental health professional in the building to identify the level of need of that student. Those reports are then submitted to the central office so we can evaluate them on a systemic level, look for trends, and put interventions in place, whether it be in a specific building or with a specific student. I'm really proud of the work that has gone on with 2 of our staff members that we've added most recently. We've added a director of health and wellness through a grant through the health department, so we're grateful for that collaboration. And in 2018, we added our mental health specialist. The work of these 2 folks is directly pointed at the mental and physical wellness of our students. They look at programs, trends, data to identify what our students need, and their sole focus is to ensure that we are addressing the needs of the whole child. Now, the good news is there's so much we can do as parents and community members to help our students, and very basic needs, very basic things that we can do to make sure that our students' mental and physical wellness is attended to. The first is ensuring that our students are getting some exercise. This can come through through play or through exercise on their own. Also, sleep. We need to ensure that our students are getting the proper sleep. And I think oftentimes this is an overlooked piece by parents. So we need to make sure that our children are getting to bed, getting at least 8, if not 9 to 10 hours of sleep. We need to make sure that maybe those phones are coming into our bedrooms instead of their bedrooms so that they're not on them late at night. Also, their healthy nutrition is a very important piece of their physical and their mental health. Having for a child to have predictability in their life, also a really important factor, so that they can count on what's going to be happening each day. They can predict what's going to be coming their way, whether it be at school or at home. And lastly, trying to have as little negative stress as possible in their life. Some stress for all of us is needed and can help us become resilient, but avoiding as much negative stress as possible. Lastly, I would like to show you a list of resources, and I would urge any of you at this point to maybe take out your phone and take a picture of this slide. You all also can go onto our website, onto our mental health link, and all these resources are available for you there as well. Thank you for your time, and I'm going to pass this now over to Ms. Paula Stanton, Dr. Paula Stanton.
Thank you. I'm actually going to use a different mic. Good evening. Testing. Good evening. So tonight I have the pleasure of sharing with you some of the ways that we prevent and respond to bullying, harassment, and intimidation. So I'm going to start by talking about some of the changes that we recently made to our bullying, harassment, and intimidation policy. You'll hear me say BHI at times tonight. As I share some of those changes, I'm going to be using language directly from our policy, hence my notes. So some of the really specific changes to our policy are, first, you're no longer going to be seeing targeted student if you report bullying and harassment on one of our forms. I'm sorry, you're not going to be seeing victim, you're going to be seeing targeted student. So we don't want to refer to our students as victims. They are not victims. They are not powerless. They are not the people responsible for the behavior. And we want to empower them to report it. So we're going to call them targeted students. We're going to call them by name, but we're not going to refer to them as victims anymore. Second, you're going to notice a change to the definition of bullying. So that new definition includes some very specific new language, and I'm going to share a little bit of that with you now. First, bullying is unwanted or demeaning behavior among students. It involves a real or a perceived power imbalance. That power imbalance can be social, emotional, it can be academic, and it's used to control or exclude a student. Second, the second element of bullying is that it is repeated. It is either repeated or it's highly likely to be repeated, and that's a change. So those two criteria need to be present in order for a behavior to be considered bullying. The second change is, or the third change I should say, is definition of cyberbullying. So cyberbullying, we all know, takes place on a computer, on a phone, or on a tablet, but it can occur through texting, through apps, or online via social media forms, or gaming. This is important because this is something that's happening right now where people can view, participate in, or share content. Cyberbullying also includes, though, in our new policy, sending, posting, or sharing negative, harmful, false, or hurtful content about another student. And it can include sharing personal or private information that's meant to embarrass or hurt or humiliate a student. The next definition I want to share changes about is harassment. So we all know that harassment includes actual or perceived negative actions that offend, ridicule, or demean. But there are some individual characteristics that have been added to our definition of harassment that include, well, it already included race. Now it includes ethnicity, immigration status, family or parental or marital status. It also includes now gender expression. So we want our students to know that any individual characteristic is going to be valued in Harford County Public Schools. We don't want to demean or ridicule a student based on their characteristics. And the last definition change is intimidation. Intimidation is any communication or action directed against another student that threatens or induces a sense of fear or inferiority. But retaliation can also be considered intimidation. So if a student is reported to have been an alleged offender for bullying or harassment or intimidation, then, and someone retaliates because they were reported, then that is also a violation of our bullying and harassment policy. Now I want to talk about some of the proactive measures, and I'm really excited about the proactive measures. So the first one is we have bullying and harassment modules. These modules are digital. They were created by our students for our students. So we had middle and high school students who worked really hard over the summer, and they're working right now actually to revise some of that based on some of the data we collected last year. But they worked on those modules to really share with our students up front what bullying, harassment, and intimidation are, how to report it, how to recognize it, how to be an upstander when they see it, and also how to deal with it if it's happened to them. So we're really excited about the fact that we can proactively address this before it happens. And we're hoping that by sharing this information beforehand, we can eliminate a lot of the behaviors that we have seen in the past. Second, we have some proactive measures in responding to bullying, harassment, and intimidation. Folks in the audience may not know this, and folks that are listening may not know this, but there is an extensive process that happens when bullying, harassment, or intimidation are reported. It's not just decided right away. There's an investigation. There is a collection of evidence, often looking at video, collecting text messages sometimes. There is a process that we go through before we determine whether an incident is bullying, harassment, or intimidation. And then there is an outcome and there is a response. So in our new policy, we have outlined very specifically what that looks like. And you can find that policy on our website at hcps.org. The last thing I want to talk about is social media. Social media is one of the biggest ways that our students engage in bullying, harassment, or intimidation, and we really need your help. We all need to be on the same page in telling our students that posting negative material online is not appropriate for a variety of reasons. And when it violates or disrupts the school environment, we're going to get involved. So we need everyone to be on the same page and understand that even if an incident happens off school property, on the weekend, once it comes into the school and it disrupts learning, then we have to respond to it because every single student in Harford County deserves to come to school and feel safe and welcome. So we're going to be working with our community and our students to make sure that they know that social media is meant to be social and not antisocial. We're going to talk to them about their digital footprints. We're going to talk to them about oversharing, not sharing too much information on social media, and we're really going to get them going at the beginning of the year so that they understand what behaviors are appropriate and what behaviors are inappropriate. And we're hoping that we're going to see a big decrease in the number of reports that we receive every year as it relates to bullying, harassment, and intimidation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So hopefully you recognize the voice. You might not recognize the face, but hopefully the voice rings a bell. I'm Jillian Lader, and so excited to share with everyone this evening some new things coming to our communications office. As you all know, you get phone calls from me, emails from me, text messages from me if you've signed up for all of those features. We update the website. We have social media platforms, all of these different avenues to communicate with our families. But we're still always looking for another way to make it easier, another way to communicate with you faster, more streamlined, and something that just makes it easier to reach our community as quickly as possible. So I'm so excited to share with this group, I think for the first time with the community, sharing that this year we will be introducing a Harford County Public Schools app. This app will allow us to actually have push notifications sent to your phone. One of the things that has always concerned me from a communication standpoint is the amount of time that it takes for our phone call system to call each of you, to call every single parent in the system, every single staff member. When we send one of those calls, it can take up to 40 minutes to cycle through those over 64,000 phone numbers. Makes sense. It calls multiple times. But when we initiate the app, those push notifications can come to your phone immediately if you've chosen to download that app. And so especially in this arena of safety and security, we find that to be an invaluable tool. It's something that will help families know that as soon as we have the information to share and we push that out to you, it will be right there at your fingertips. And so that's something that we're really looking forward to this year. We're working through that process of getting it set up, and as soon as it's ready, we'll be sharing that information with all of our families so that you can go ahead, download that app. And that app will have multiple features. Obviously, tonight our focus is on the safety and security, but eventually that app will house everything for the school system. You'll be able to do food and nutrition pieces on there. You'll be able to see schedules. You'll be able to see all kinds of information in that app. But given tonight's topic, one of the most exciting things for me is knowing that I'll be able to reach our families that quickly with a push notification system through the app. So thank you.
Thanks, Jillian. That app sounds fabulous, and I know our parents are cheering when they heard about that, so that's really great news. Thank you so much. So now it comes to the time of our program where we have our Parent Advisory Council members who volunteered their time this evening to come up and ask some questions that they've been wondering about after hearing from our panelists. We also had Dr. Peter Carpenter, our Director of Organizational Development, monitoring Parent Academy at hcps.org questions that have been coming in all day and this evening. So Parent Advisory Council members, if you could step to the mic, and I will facilitate those questions that you've prepared for our panelists. So please proceed. Thank you. And we'll start with the first one. Thank you.
Does this work? Oh, my kids go to Abingdon Elementary. Go Eagles. You kind of answered it, but I was just wondering, I was going to go speak pre-COVID. What are the differences this year versus previous years for safety? Like, what are you focusing on? I mean, not thinking about COVID, just previous years. What are you focusing on this year as opposed to what you focused on before?
Right, so what's really changed? I think I'll start with Chief Brooks on that, and perhaps Dr. Geringer can add, but we'll start with you, Chief Brooks.
All right, thank you for the question. So one of the things that we're changing this year is a mandated time frame to complete some of the drills that we've talked about that we are now including. We also are changing the fact that we will have our regional coordinators involved on the ground with the schools, helping to monitor how they're executing those drills, where we can make improvements, where we can make updates, but also identify what we're doing right as well, right? Because a lot of our schools do a lot of things right. And so what we do is we look for those gaps. And again, this year, we're including the voice of our students across the district to let them participate in what safety looks like to them. All right? Dr. Geringer may want to add to that as well.
Sure, definitely the intentional training is huge, as well as the expertise. I think more training for administrators as well, a real strategic focus on how to make sure that we're able to keep our schools as safe as possible, really giving us opportunities to not only dig into our current plans, but to have those tabletop exercises and really think out the scenario. There are some times where they make us step away because you never know where we could be at that moment or if we get pulled away. And it forces our staff to try to work it out on their own as well. So it really helps us see gaps. I've been a principal for 15 years, and really seeing the trajectory of how much that our county has intentionally and strategically focused on safety makes me feel good as a mom, because I know when I send my babies off to their school, now that they're a little bit older, I feel like they're safe and I don't have to worry about them, because it's our job. It's safety first and then learning, so that intentionality, the strategic focus, the expansion of the office, as well as the drive and vision of our superintendent and Dr. Davis as well, that our campuses need to be safe, I think is the biggest difference from previous years. Thank you for the question.
Thanks for the question. Our next Parent Advisory Council member, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jillian Miller. My Abingdon Eagle just graduated. So she's going to Edgewood Middle this year. But Dr. Geringer, you're amazing. I wanted to ask the question, will there be additional social workers versus SROs?
So I think that one goes to Mr. Hennigan.
Yes, I'm really excited about where we are with our social workers. We have incrementally increased the amount of social workers we have in our schools. And this year we will be at 20 social workers, which is more than we've ever had in our school system. Historically, our social workers served in the capacity of working with our regional special education programs. But we have since expanded to having social workers in different capacities. Some of them have been brought in through our community schools. So our community schools have funding, and they've identified the need to have a social worker in their building. And some of our social workers are providing therapeutic services directly to students, while others are working more out in the community with families and identifying needs that they may have. We have 2 staff members that really work closely with them, Ms. Christina Alton, our mental health specialist, but also Ms. Robin Meyer, one of our special education coordinators, that really lead the charge with our 20 social workers. And I'm encouraged that we will continue to increase those social workers over the years.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hennigan. Our next Parent Advisory Council member, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Katie York, and I have a teen at Edgewood Middle School. Dr. Stanton, you've addressed some of it, but I was interested in how Harford County Public Schools protects its staff and students from online bullying and harassment.
Thank you for that question. So I had a conversation with our school system general counsel to ask about, what are some things that we do to protect our staff? And so part of our conversation about that was, it depends on where those, I'll talk about students too, but I'll talk about staff first. It depends on where those messages are posted. So for example, if it goes on our HCPS website, then we can remove it from the site. We can certainly report it to Facebook if it's on Facebook. But if it's on their personal page, there are some other things that we might do. For example, sometimes general counsel can get involved. Sometimes there might be a need in extreme circumstances for a restraining order. But mainly we want people to know that we do investigate those instances where there's a report of a staff member being bullied, and we do support the staff member. For students, we go through the process that's outlined in our policy, which is pretty extensive now, which is investigation as well. It's also supportive measures for students, not just for the person who is the target of bullying and harassment, but also for the alleged offender, because sometimes those behaviors are happening because that student needs support. So we really are looking to wrap our support around all of our students to make sure they understand the expectations and that they learn from sometimes some of their mistakes. Does that answer it? Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Stanton.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other Parent Advisory Council members with questions? Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name's Gretel Meinhardt. I actually have 2 kids. I have an elementary school child, at Bakerfield Elementary, and then I have a freshman at Aberdeen High School. So my question is, it's not a cookie cutter situation, but I want to understand what the plans are in place to better communicate with parents as the situation's happening. I do understand they're not supposed to have cell phones in their hands, but we all know that does happen. So what communication is in place, whatever level it is, to better let us know more immediately, so that when our child is sending us a message in fear, that we can ease their pain, ease their fears, versus knowing it's a more escalated situation that we need to be more concerned about, rather than getting a message late at night.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So thinking about communication, I'm thinking that's Jillian first, Mrs. Later.
Thank you. It's a valid concern that any parent has, and especially if your child is in school with a cell phone and you get that message. So the first thing that I want to share is that something that I think the Parent Academy Council can help us with, or Parent Advisory Council can help us with, is reiterating to our families that your number one source of information is HCPS. That's the first step, is making sure that we get that word out, that if there's an incident, we will be communicating with you. But we know sometimes the kids have their cell phones in their hands, they might have the information first. And that can be really scary for a parent. And so reiterating that, come to HCPS, come to our channels, we will be communicating with you. The app is going to make that first step faster and easier. We have all of the other resources, the phones, the emails, the text messages. But something else that I am proud to say that we have is a really good relationship with our PIOs in law enforcement. All of the PIOs in each of our law enforcement agencies have my cell phone. I know that because they call me, they text me, and I am so grateful for that relationship that we have with the law enforcement here in Harford County, because it's invaluable, because I know that I can pick up the phone and reach out to any of them. They will pick up the phone and reach out to me, and that's something that we've already been doing, and I'm confident we will continue doing, is that when there is a situation, we're talking to one another before communication goes out, because we know that as a parent, if you're on one page and one social media page and they're telling you something about the situation, and then you come to HCPS and we don't have that information available to you, then you're questioning,
is this information valid? Is it accurate? And so we will be working together, and we have been working together to make sure that, for example, if there's a situation in a school that involves law enforcement, that I know what they're sharing so that then I can utilize that when I'm communicating with families in those situations.
Thank you, Mrs. Slater. That's very helpful, and I'm sure it eases parents' minds to know that that app is coming, and that's going to help with that process. So thank you for that. I think at this point, Harford County PTA or any other Parent Advisory Council members, okay. I think we have Dr. Peter Carpenter, who has been monitoring questions throughout the evening, and he's coming up with those questions. He actually has his laptop in hand. And those questions have been coming into parentacademy@hcps.org. We've actually been getting those questions for the past several days. And so, as I mentioned before, the Parent Academy will be taking those questions, looking at a frequently asked question document probably on the web that we can share with our community. So, Dr. Carpenter, your first question.
Good evening. Yes, I have quite a few for this evening. And I think this one would go to Mr. Brooks, or Chief Brooks. Has the school system created an active shooter plan? And are we updating our staff's knowledge, such as continuing education, of a school shooting or what to do during a school shooting?
Yes, so thank you for that question. The answer is yes. We have created an active shooter, active assailant plan. We have created an active shooter training program, which I referred to earlier as ASSERT, Active Assailants Critical Response Training, where we have our staff members across the district trained in how to respond to these events. Namely, we use what the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security uses, which is basic run, hide, fight. And we go through that continuum, and we give the experience of what that feels like to our staff members. We actually take them through that whole entire experience of run, hide, fight through scenarios that we do, and we do those as practical exercises. They then take that into the classroom, and that's how they conduct and run their drills with their students. And I will say we've also differentiated the way that we deliver those drills and instructions based on grade level and age, right? So we can still convey the same information. We just differentiate the way that we do it from a high school student to an elementary school student, right? So yes, to answer that question, we do have it in place. The second part of that question is what we took the opportunity to do this summer with our school safety symposium, right? That was to bring folks back in and not just give them a refresher on active assailant, but to give them refreshers in other areas of safety and security as well. And we spent the summertime doing that. We had 2 different symposiums to be able to bring our administrators across the district in. And then when we come back into the school year, we will do the same thing with our teachers, and we will have the refreshers and just get them back up to speed in responding to these types of events.
Thank you so much. Our second question this evening, maybe Dr. Geringer, you could address this one. What are schools doing, what are schools in the district doing for safe arrival and dismissal of students? I know you've worked in a number of schools, and there are probably some best practices that are going on.
Yes, 18 to be exact. Thank you for dating me, Dr. Carpenter. Well, first, our buildings are locked up tight. I mean, that's very important. One thing we remind our staff all the time is do not prop doors. Same thing with the kids, don't prop the doors. We have also trained the kids and our staff, if somebody comes up to a side door, don't let them in. And sometimes you kind of feel bad about that, but you want them to understand that they'll ring the bell and we'll let them in to make sure that they're safe. So that's really important for first, the culture of a building, to make sure that you're not getting in unless you're coming through the front door. When you look at arrival and dismissal, that's the one time that our doors are open. And what we try to do is limit those accesses. So when we think about Abingdon as an example, we have a 92,000 square foot building. When we bring in our 700 students, our front door is open and our side door is open. When you see our doors open, we have staff outside and we also have staff inside, and we monitor that because we want to make sure we see who's coming and going. Same thing with dismissal. We try very hard to make sure, especially at the elementary level, that we walk our students out. God love our little 5-year-old babies. There's 17 buses in the front of our school, and they'll just get on the first yellow one. So we want to make sure that we're very safe and intentional. We also ask our parents to really let us know about dismissal. give it to us in writing. We never take it over the phone. Johnny's going home a different way today because we can't verify who it is. So that's another piece that we have in place to make sure that we keep our students safe and our little eagles are flying home in the right directions. Our administrators work really hard to make sure that we roam our buildings and we make sure the doors stay locked. We don't have the time to really sit and look at cameras, so we try to walk quite a bit. And we've also trained the kids that if you see something, say something. And that's one piece that we make sure that our arrival and our dismissal are safe, as well as safe during the day.
Thank you so much. And our last question, as I've been scrolling through the questions, so many of these have already been addressed, which is really great. But for our last question, Mr. Hennigan and Dr. Stanton, I think this falls into your lap. What is the plan for disabled students or quiet students who are afraid or unable to speak up to report bullying in school? And what is being done to encourage bystanders and observers, or as you said, Dr. Stanton, upstanders, to report?
So I'll let Dr. Stanton speak a little bit to the different modalities by which a report can be made, but I would start by saying we've worked really hard with our staff and continue to teach, to have our staff build relationships. And that's really the best proactive and preventative measure that can be taken. From day one, to build relationships with students so that they feel comfortable coming to staff and discussing things that are occurring in their lives. I would also say with regards to our students with disabilities, they often have several staff members such as case managers that are working with them in a more intimate setting and smaller groups. So it lends itself to having those kind of conversations that may be more uncomfortable to have in the classroom in front of other students. But also all of those staff members that I had posted on the screen earlier, our school counselors, our school psychologists, our social workers, they're working oftentimes in those one-on-one settings, and that is a great opportunity for those students to be able to share information that, again, may be uncomfortable to share.
Thank you. And I'll just share a little bit about the different ways that students can report because, yeah, sometimes they are going to be a little nervous about that. So first, our bullying harassment reporting forms are going to be all over the school building. There is, in every school, there's a box that they can put those forms into if they feel like they can't go to a staff member directly with it. They can go to a staff member and report that orally. They can report it online through our BHI reporting form. There are just so many ways to report it. And then we also want folks to know that we're going to document those reports, whether they're oral or not, with the online reporting form. So we're going to have that documentation so that we can document how we've investigated and the outcome and all of that. But as you said, we're really trying to build a culture of telling students, you know, we need you to be safe. We want you to feel safe. So if you see something, say something. If you're afraid to talk, ask your friend to report it. An upstander, a witness, can report bullying and harassment for you if you feel unsafe. So we're going to be telling our students that, and hopefully we'll see, you know, lots of people getting involved and noticing when these things happen. You should also know that teachers are trained to notice when bullying and harassment are occurring. They get the same training that our students are going to get with the new definitions and all of that. So we feel really confident with our prevention program.
And so a part of that question is what we're going to focus on with our Student Safety Council, and that's the bystander part, because we've seen an escalation of people who are watching things unfold in front of them. And one of the most disturbing things that we can talk about when we just talk about the reality of what's going on in the world is just people taking out their cell phones and recording rather than asking for help. And so sometimes we learn that people say, well, I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to get injured. And so acting doesn't necessarily mean that you have to physically immerse yourself into a conflict, but you can summons help. You can let someone know that something is going on. So part of what we'll focus on with our Student Safety Council is having those conversations with them so that they can take those conversations back to other members of their student body and talk about this whole bystander impact that we're starting to see more and more of in society. And also, that's how parents can help us as well, to reiterate that message at home, that when you see something, say something. And here's what I like to also say in closing about the see something, say something. The see something, say something really asks that you come to folks that can do something about what it is you see, that can take action, that can provide that information to people who can respond to the situation. See something, say something is not going on social media and blasting it to 20,000 other people and saying, this is what I heard, right? That's not really theoretically what we're looking for. See something, say something. We want students to come to an authority in the building, and even parents. We want parents to contact us and let us know what you've seen and because we investigate all of these situations, especially threats. We investigate every single one of them till its end, and whatever that end turns up to be, whether it's unfounded or whether law enforcement action needs to be taken or whether it's administrative action that needs to be taken at the school level. So I just want to close by saying that.
Thank you, Donovan.
Thank you, Dr. Carpenter.
And that is all.
Perfect, thank you. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening for the Parent Academy virtual town hall on safety and security. I want to take a moment and thank our guests for their expertise and their wisdom and their guidance for parents in this, and for your time. And we know we're in good hands after hearing from all of you, so thank you so much. And we know our children are in good hands. And thank you so much to our guests for joining us this evening. We really appreciate your time, our law enforcement partners, Dr. Bolson, the Board of Ed, and our Parent Advisory Council members and our PTA members. We appreciate all of you. Thank you to our partners, for Mountain Christian Church for hosting us this evening, and for Harford TV, and we really appreciate that as well, that support. So Parent Academy is just getting started. As Dr. Davis said, we'll be meeting throughout the year to talk about all kinds of topics for parents: health, mental health, how do you support your children academically for college and career, and how do you really just make sure you help them to thrive every day as parents. And we know that's a hard job, but certainly one that we enjoy and love. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll see you at the next Parent Academy.